to the RunRX podcast, where we talk about all things running. As many runners know, it's 90% mental. So join Coach Valerie and Coach Caroline as we go through the mental side of running.
Welcome back to the RunRX podcast. I'm your host, Coach Caroline, and I'm here with Coach Valerie. Coach, I recently found this new Instagram ads. I do a lot of shopping on Instagram, and it was this new shoe. Everybody loves it. You can use it everywhere, and it's showing all these runners and everybody doing all this stuff. And then the thing said, it feels like you're running on a cloud. And I went, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about this idea of impact.
Okay. So it's a really good conversation. And by the way, the thought of running on a cloud. So let's just for a second, why would that sound so good? Well, the reason it sounds so good is because it makes it sound like you're going to be weightless, right? If I'm running on clouds, that means it's like I'm not, I'm running on something soft,
Right,
there's not this thud or impact, if you will. And my challenge with that is the reality of running is an impact sport. Running is impact. You are actually definitely touching the ground. And the cloud part is when you're in the air and you feel nothing, of course. And the challenge is we're talking about the wrong side of the equation. Does that make sense? We're trying to get people excited, the shoe company anyway, about the excitement of hitting the ground, which is the exact wrong thing. So I wish they would say things. It feels like you're flying through the clouds when you're in the air, because we have a flight phase in running. And in that flight phase, that's when, by the way, the pictures that we see, the pictures we always see of runners is in that flight phase and their legs are separated and their hair is flying, right? So that's when you're in the clouds. So when they say running on clouds, I think people have this thought that they should be almost on a trampoline, like I'm going to bounce off the fluffy clouds, right? That's, I think, the image that's projected. And the challenge is, guys, is that the reality of running is you really actually want to touch down on a stable support, which is the ground. And what we want is for you to feel, what does it feel like to minimize any ground contact so that anytime you do spin on the ground, it's a very a light tap, because you're going to sense it, you're going to touch. We want you to only focus though on the unweighting and getting off the ground. So it's an interesting way to rethink how you run. And we had a question come up in our running group that right now is the Olympics. And the question was, someone said, I just read an article or I was listening to a sportscaster, one of the two, and they said that runners, elite sprinters, so these are the Olympic track sprinters, they have been measuring their ground contact, and they're hitting the ground with much higher force than an age group runner or recreational runner. So since they hit the ground so hard, maybe if they hit it harder, they could run faster.
Sorry, that hurt.
So the challenge is that this is called misinformation. So they're taking the information that they think they're seeing, and then they're like, well, here's a solution. So this is why, by the way, this is why they've made so much cushion in running shoes, because they're like, well, we want to make sure the runner, when they hit the ground, hits the ground with less impact, right? And that sounds great, of course. And the way running is taught in, let's say, track and field or even marathon or any other running than what I teach, they talk about hitting the ground and then pushing off. So then they make these shoes that have all this extra cushion, because their thought process is the harder you hit the ground and push off, the faster you're going to run. Well, here's the challenge of that. In reality, that's not what happens. What you want is the foot to touch down as the body, upper body, which is 68% of your body weight, is traveling forward. So you actually should touch down with less than half of your body weight. And then when your foot does come off the ground, it's less than 2%. So this is really important because in reality, gravity is what causes acceleration, not the hitting of the ground, right? Can you imagine,
Right.
guys, like hitting the ground is a stop. When you
Right.
impact, when you hit something, that's not what you want. You don't want to stop. So yes, of course there's impact in running. What happens when your foot touches down, if your knee is bent, your upper body is lifted and slightly ahead of you, which is how it should be, then it's really great because you're going to use what's called muscle tendon elasticity. But gravity and ground reaction force are first. So what happens is if you use gravity, ground reaction force, and muscle elasticity, that energy is redirected. So you go forward with it. Your foot pops up off the ground using rebound. Ding,
Right.
and then your body's traveling forward. Well, the challenge is that it's important for people to understand that because ground reaction force is not a motive force. So the ground can only propel a runner forward in combination with muscle activity. However, it needs to be muscle tendon forces with the hamstring. And so there's a great paper on this, and maybe it's on the Pose Method site. But this is the challenge of people misunderstanding running. And so what's interesting is Nike just made a super shoe for the Olympics. And by the way, Nike's the original creator of the super shoe. Now all the companies make them, but Nike's first. And they made the super shoe first with Kipchoge. He's the original maker of the shoe. They used his biomechanics to make this shoe. So he personally tested it. So what's so fantastic is his running, his method, how he runs is just like what I talk about. He's naturally gifted. They made this super shoe so that when the foot touched down, it's got a carbon plate and it's got a layer of foam. So when the foot touches down, those three forces, gravity, ground reaction force, muscle tendon elasticity, all work to his benefit, to anybody's benefit, to take that energy and redirect it forward. He knows how to run that way. It's his shoe.
Right.
But the super shoe for almost now every single elite runner is wearing this shoe, and even recreational runner. However, they find with the recreational runners, unless you already run a sub 8-minute mile pace, they're not getting the benefits that everyone else is getting because their gait's not the same. It's really important to understand that. So in Nike, because they get it, they know, they made a new shoe, and it's crazy. They removed spikes from their spikes for the Olympics.
Wow.
Yeah, and they did it because you get a lot faster by building a product that supports a stable footbed. So they removed the spike, creating the performance by creating a flatter, more stable footbed. Think about that, guys. To make someone faster, they need a stable footbed, not cushion. You see? So they removed the spike. So we don't need this any extra. We don't need anything between the ground and the foot and the shoe. I mean, we don't need anything extra. We don't need to add more. We need to actually take away. So what's interesting is the super spike, because they have the carbon plate, just so you guys know, because they know exactly where the foot's hitting. But notice, guys, the removed spike, this is directly from Nike. The removed spike was from the high point in the middle of the ball of the foot. This is when it touches down. And so many people think it's toes. Like we hear this all the time, right? It's not. It's the middle of the ball of the foot. And in fact, if you read the whole article, they actually added a few spikes on the side because most people's natural running, like if you just have a free ankle, there's a little bit of touchdown. A lot of people will touch down like on the inside of the foot or the outside of the foot, and then they go to the center. So this is like they put guard gates.
Yeah.
To purposely make the runner land not just underneath them, guys, but on a stable support that's flat, which is exactly what we teach and we talk about. And it's great. And they even called it their minimalist shoe, their minimalist spike. Isn't that funny? He said it's our minimalist approach. So I'm just saying that when you start to look at like running as what running really is, it starts to make you question, oh, well, okay, or not even question, but like, well, that makes sense. And when things make sense, and then you like apply what the theory is or what the thought is, because like for us, we teach people how to do a ball foot hop. One, so you can find that muscle and develop muscle tendon elasticity. It's really lacking in most runners
Right.
because they don't practice hopping. And we also strengthen your relationship with the ball of your foot. So I just love seeing the connection, right? And once people start to understand running and what really muscle tendon elasticity is, then you hope they get why we don't want you to put more weight into the ground. So
Right.
as fun as running on clouds seems, I would rather they say flying through clouds, maybe. Right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Just the idea is that not to emphasize the impact, not to emphasize the yeah. kind of
Well,
kind of mixing my words.
let's, yeah, I mean, it's crazy because, for example, when I first started coaching running, it was just because I had a group of ladies and they wanted to train for a 5K or a 10K. I don't remember. This was 1990, a lot of
Right.
years ago. And so in my world, for a lot of years, I was training recreational runners that had actually never even run. They didn't play sports. We didn't grow up running. There wasn't track and field background, none of this stuff. So we were like just lacing up our shoes and going out and running. Had no idea what we were doing. So we didn't even think about there's a way to run or there's a way to be more efficient. None of that. And when you went to the shoe store, you just got running shoes.
Right.
So now there's just so much data and there's research. But remember, guys, I got into this like 25 years ago as far as like learning about running. And for me, especially in the beginning, it was just, I didn't have any emotion with it. So it was like, well, if you keep your knees bent, you're going to reduce impact on your knee. I thought, well, that's smart. Okay, I'll keep my knees bent. Well,
Yeah.
if you actually learn to hop on the ball of your foot, that'll help you learn how to pull your foot up and use your hamstring and save your hips and lower back and knees. I was like, well,
Right.
that's double bonus. And then, of course, just good posture, good alignment, guys, is for everything, right? So holding your upper body up, because we all thought we were supposed to lean forward to run faster, because that's what it looks like you're supposed to do.
Right.
And that's fine at the start, but then you're supposed to run with your upper body. And you're like, okay, well, then I'll just put that together. And so it's just fun when you see like, and that's all I do now. All I do is help people see that.
Uh-huh.
And but when you like, for example, the woman that asked the question, not to derail, but in one end, and this is hard to explain because I don't have numbers in front of me, but yes, of course, if you run faster, you are essentially going to hit the ground harder. That's just laws of physics.
Right.
And especially if you're heavier, you're going to hit the ground even harder because of laws of physics. Like you can't change your mass, right? You've got body weight. So a lot of people kind of tie in running faster with, say, hurting themselves,
Yes.
like,
Mm-hmm.
right? Things like that. So it was interesting because I said, and this ties into us with RunRX. We actually teach all of our runners to practice like a sprinter because we use running drills. We use the same drills that soccer players use, runners use, sprinters use. They're just fantastic to develop skill and elasticity and coordination and these things that you need for running. However, we're teaching you at the level you can do them at, right?
Right.
And so that you can have that base and that foundation to be better at your sport. And the fun part is we really see such a positive change in all of our runners, especially when they open their mind to being coachable and stop thinking or comparing themselves. Like one lady said, well, maybe because we're not good athletes, then we have to do pushing. And I was like, how does that make any sense?
Yeah, no.
We teach the same running to any runner, regardless. But one thing to keep in mind is always know that, like, that's the fun thing too of our community is like, I'm always like, no, we're all learning to move as well as we can.
Right.
Whatever age you are, whatever speed you want to run. But of course you want to move as similar as you can, right? To like the best
Right.
runner. And so anyway, my point is that with the whole thing is that it was a great conversation. But when it's almost like an not say affirmation, but kind of when you start to see what the shoes are trying to do and that we actually train you to do what that shoe is doing, it's just that benefit for you.
Right. Absolutely. And then you learn how to let your body do it the way it's meant to be and the way it's
Right.
meant to be out there. And that's really what's so powerful, guys, is you start to understand how you can use gravity and physics and things with your body elasticity and your natural body movements. And it doesn't become about the shoe or yeah, you can still get chafing if you wear cotton or whatever, you might have, or you might get sick if you have the wrong goo, but those are things you can kind of control. And once you learn to control the uncontrollable or work with the uncontrollable, I think that's what makes running really fun and powerful.
I
That's
wanted to
my
say, I have
takeaway
to
on it.
say one last thing though. This
Yeah.
is really fun. We had a guy, and I think we've even talked about him before, but he was very hesitant to join the group because he's older and
Yeah.
he's
Yes.
right. So of
Yeah.
course, we're like, oh no, come in. So anyway, he was having some, he was struggling with the running in the beginning. It's awkward. So he got him to come on a Zoom, and I explained to him about falling and how if you start to think of running as lifting up and unweighting, and that's not a word you hear often, but you start to think about it, it's unweighting. Your feet should feel light. You're still going to feel it. You're running,
Right.
that's the best part, but your feet feel light. They feel quick. You almost can feel like I'm wanting to fly. And it sounds a little hokey, but I'm telling you, it's the way it is. And so
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
he reached out to me a couple days ago and he said, I just want you to know, you're right. He said, I've been really focusing on lifting up and even thinking about being unweighted. And I felt just for a second that flying feeling. And that warms me. You can't imagine. Like, that's
Yes.
so cool because he was like opened his mind to this is what running can feel like, even at 72, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's not like the end all, but my point is that so many people want to be like, talk about the shoes or the whatever. And I'm like, no. Go out and feel what running can feel like. This is the fun of what we're teaching you. Then we'll talk about shoes.
Right.
All right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, guys, we hope you will take a look at the membership if you're so interested. Go to runrx.fit. That's runrx.fit and click on the Work with RunRx button. It's right there. It's a big green button. You can find all the ways you can work with us. And if you like our show and you find that it's a great, we try to kind of keep it a little short. I try to make it about the time it would have taken me to jump in my car and go to a track or go to meet some friends to go run or just go out to a trail. It's just that perfect amount to kind of listen to before you get out to your run if you're not going to just go out the door and run. And we hope you'll share it with a friend. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for joining us on the RunRX podcast. If you'd like to know more, join us at www.runrx.fit. And if you have additional questions that you'd like answered on the podcast, email us at support@runrx.fit.